So this new governor came in and he said, well, you know, we've sort of let our public compensation, public employee compensation, become too generous, especially in the major metropolitan areas of Ohio. And so his thought was one of the ways we make ourselves more competitive is to strengthen the hand of the state and local government in bargaining with public employees, making it easier to take back excessive, from the point of view of the governor, wages and benefits.
State issue 2 was just downright wrong. You know, it attacked all civil servants, you know, basically from the firefighters to the teachers to all public employees.
They very easily could have cut my pay 20%. They very easily could have cut my benefits. There's no telling what could have happened, but it would have been different statewide. Columbus firefighters would have got an automatic 10% pay reduction. In Cincinnati, we're fortunate to have four firefighters on a company. They could have cut that to 3 or even 2, which would have decimated our safety.
You know, I had a heart attack last December and those guys saved my life. I shouldn't be here. Well, what happened if that would have been cut back and they keep cutting back and they keep cutting back to where you're waiting minutes? Minutes saved my life.
The pretty red fire trucks that show up aren't going to put the fire out. A proper amount of firefighters that can put the water on the fire, they can go in and effect a rescue, search for someone in a smoky condition. They do make the difference. Firefighters understood that, where we don't know that our counterparts that were politicians really got the intricacies that were involved there.
You heard constantly testimony that was hard to listen to, you know, that people say, well, we don't need them, they cost, you know, too much here or that, and we know some of the things they're telling us just blatant lies. And the one person, the one representative, he just stood there and just rolled his eyes. You know, he took their testimony, because you always have to submit written testimony, and he was holding, he was just kind of threw it aside. People in the back were back there texting, weren't paying any attention. And I'll tell you the worst thing, we had one gentleman that was a vet, he's one of our members, had lost his leg in the service. And the guy asked him, I suppose you're up because you want special services because you're handicapped. I mean, just flat insulting. And he said, no, I just want to be treated the same as anybody else.
It went down a little over 60-40, rejected by the voters. Was not very different from where it started out when it was first put on the ballot. To the extent there was a surprise, it was how many people turned out. And the total size of the no vote, 2 million, was greater than the total number of people who voted for the governor.
And it was so uplifting, and the biggest reason it was uplifting is because for the first time we really felt the public was behind us, you know, in what we do. That's what hit right here, you know, because you always hear public workers this, public workers that, but they actually stood up for us.
But I think what really struck me about election night was what struck me about the entire campaign. I was up on the dais speaking, and I looked out, and it was a broad variety of people, black, white, men, women, people that were part of labor and people that weren't traditionally part of labor, faith leaders. So many different people were there. And that really spoke to me, because while we were there celebrating our election, we were there celebrating it with the people that got us to that point, which was all of Ohio. The beginning of August, when we were doing all of those things, I really became dedicated to issue 2 almost as a full-time job, but it was difficult because I was still working my shifts at the firehouse. So every third day I'd be back at the firehouse for 24 hours and then come back and campaign and make phone calls and do interviews.
I can't tell how many doors I've knocked on and phone calls, you know, going on, because the public didn't understand. But once you explained it to them, because they just thought, well, you know, they just want more money. We said, no, that's not the campaign at all. And then all of a sudden you saw more and more support, and people were actually saying, thank you, you know, thank you for doing what you do.
There are 88 counties, and issue 2 lost in all but 6. And in part that's because even in very Republican, fairly conservative rural counties, a lot of them, they love their police and fire.
You really, really, really have to pay attention to who's running for office and what they stand for. That's what's going to determine how much, you know, we're going to keep getting attacked, because the one-party system obviously is not working.
I'm worried about bad government. I'm worried about bad policies. I think one of the things that the Issue 2 campaign taught us was that the people of Ohio, and I think nationwide, if you look at some of the other things, don't want extremist politics. They want good policy. They want policy that's not going to affect their neighbors. They want policy that's not going to affect their safety.